So we are actually now, before we get to the post-screening discussion, we are going to Skype with James in Calgary.
Sure. The post-screening discussion was really good. We kept talking a little bit about the perception of living in Alberta versus the reality of it. So where queer perception and experience can be different in major urban centers versus here. And we decided that Albertans are fairly tough, and that's why we do so well. And that the diversity of the community here is really well integrated, and we thought that was a positive. Yeah, I'm curious to see if your audience finds that there's a difference in the comfort within queer identity from large cities to small towns, because that's something that we covered. We definitely saw a shift.
So I'll sign off here, and thank you very much, and it's such a pleasure to finally meet you via Skype, and thanks again for all the help that you've offered and the fabulous event that you have obviously just completed over there. So enjoy the post-screening discussion, and we'll see you online if you're tweeting or Facebooking. And any sign language sign-off goodbyes that you want to offer us? Bye, James. Thank you so much. So did I say that we were beta testing this format? It's been going pretty well, but you know, Skype, it's always Skype. So I'm going to just pick up and just say that I'm very excited to introduce our moderator for tonight. And I'm sure she's going to tell you everything that I didn't. But we're very honored to have Meta here with us tonight. So please welcome Meta. I'm really sorry.
We had a brief discussion yesterday about whether I would do the conversation with James or whether Mandy would do it, and I'm really glad we went with Mandy. Yeah, I just want to welcome you all here. Thank you for coming. What a great crowd. And maybe I'll just take this moment to invite the panelists up onto the stage. And, ooh, that light is bright. Okay, so, yeah, come on up to the stage, folks. And I just wanted to also, just invite that, the safety, create some safety, I guess. I'd like to just invite everybody to maybe just think about this as a time to kind of play and get to know each other. And I know for some of you this is all old hat, and for some of you it might be completely new. And so I just want to welcome everybody, wherever you're at. If you've just never heard of trans before and you're just coming to check it out, great. Thank you for coming and learning and growing with us. And so I just invite people to, as Mandy said, roll with the mistakes and assume that just assuming that we all have positive intent here. And one of the games I'm going to be playing is the pronoun game. So if you have a comment, I'll be asking you if you're willing for your name and what pronoun you prefer. And this is one of the things we do to create inclusive space around gender. Come on up, Daphne. Come on. So, right. Okay. Sorry. I'm gonna have to keep reminding me because this is not something I'm not used to. So, I'll begin by introducing our panel. Our first panel member is an intersex woman. She is Hijra, a Hindu, a heterosexual lesbian, a social justice advocate, and most importantly, a human being. She may not know what she wants to be when she grows up, but she knows what kind of world she wants to live in. Daphne is dedicated to social justice, spends all of her energy reaching out to the community. She is currently working both as the Students of Color Outreach Coordinator at University of Victoria Student Society and the Women's Director at Camosun College. She has leveraged both of these roles to do powerful and groundbreaking work as an existentialist trans educator. Daphne believes that the greatest tool she has to quell oppressive forces is a candid and kind approach. Please put your hands together for Daphne Shad. Our next panelist is a genderqueer activist wholeheartedly dedicated to creating supportive and inclusive communities. They currently work as the Trans Inclusion Coordinator at the Victoria Sexual Assault Centre, where services are open to women, trans, and gender variant people. Previously, a support and prevention educator for a sexual assault centre in Montreal, and later Y Camp Thunderbird, they have created and delivered programming that supports queer trans youth, implemented anti-oppressive training and gender-inclusive practices, and facilitated anti-oppression and social justice workshops. Alex encourages all people to think about their own gender and says they spend their spare time living and playing in the great outdoors, the only place they have ever felt freed from the binaries and expectations of gender. People of all genders, give it up for Alex McAdams. And finally, our next panelist is an award-winning genderqueer filmmaker with a global reach. She has more than 40 short films to her name, and her work has graced screens at international film festivals as far abroad as Tehran and galleries as prestigious as the Museum of Modern Art in New York. She reached over 10 million viewers as a writer and director of the CBC television series entitled Road Movies, where she came out on screen in 1992, beating Ellen DeGeneres to the punch by a full 5 years. Of deep relevance to the film we've just seen, in the late 80s, she recorded, toured, and performed with 5 alternative reggae and ska bands in Montreal, including Sons of the Desert and Double Agent. And this is very exciting, she has just finished shooting right here in Victoria her very first feature film called 2 for 1. Please give a very warm welcome to Maureen Bradley. So we're going to invite questions for the audience, and I invite you to think about how this film intersects with your own life, and what meanings, what thoughts, how does this interact with the way you live in the world, what comes up for you, and just to ponder that. And think we're going to ask you to come with questions. And it's not so much about actually getting questions for our panel as it is, as Mandy mentioned, this is the open cinema format, and this is something I'm just learning and I'm quite excited about, is really about creating community dialogue, community engagement, using film as a platform to generate discussion around issues. And so I wanted to start, Maureen, by just asking you, when we talked a little bit on the phone earlier, you mentioned both oh no, wait a minute. Sorry, I'm going to give each of you just a moment to, or multiple moments even, just to talk about where you're at right now, having just seen the film. I know most of you have seen it before, but seeing it here again tonight, what's up for you, and just give us, an idea of what this has generated for you tonight, and. Maybe Daphne, you could start. The mic's right there. Or whoever wants to start. But there's the mic. You need the mic so the folks in Calgary can hear us. Hi, Calgary. Great to see you. I grew up in Calgary, so this is a personal connection for me. Anyway, please.
I wish there was more table here. So there's a barrier. At the same time, no, not really. I think the film for me, I'll be candid as I usually am, and I kind of wanted to leave about 15 minutes into it just because it was just generating a lot of, it started to generate emotion, and I could see that where it was going for me, and it just kind of continued to rumble on through the film, so it was very difficult to kind of hold that together, and I think right now I'm not going to hold it together, but it was we all have different life stories, but some of the key parts of the narrative were very reflective of my own life story. So it was at times very almost jarring to be kind of thinking about that things that I usually suppress and don't think about in my day-to-day. So that's how the film was, and this is the first time I saw it, so.
Thanks, Daphne. Hello. Thanks, Daphne. And so I think I can say that it really, it sounds like it felt really, really real and raw for you too. And I know that's something, the way it brought up a lot of feelings for me as well. And so for those of you who maybe feel you're farther from the subject matter, just to, I think, so something to know is how deeply sort of connecting this movie is.
Yeah, I felt similar. I'd seen the movie before. I just watched it at home in my living room, and I think the first time I watched it, I really felt, this is so cool, so much Ray Spoon music, and I think that there's sometimes when we're talking about really personal stories, when we're talking about our own stories, sometimes it can be easier to just shut it off. And I think that's how I felt the first time I watched it. I felt like it was a really quirky, awkward film, and it was fun. And hard at times. But this time, I think being in this space and being surrounded by friends and being surrounded by people that I've recognized and had recognized through my forays in the trans communities here in Victoria, it felt way more emotional, and it felt way more personal, and there's a lot of Ray's story that I really identify with. I identify by the pronoun they. I grew up in a small town that was really evangelical. I grew up in a really religious home, not an evangelical home, but still these topics of conversation, of exclusion, were very raw and very real. And so I feel like this can be a very emotional conversation, but I'm excited for that.
Thanks so much.
So I didn't totally hear the end, but you're asking about what's the best part of my life about being genderqueer, about being gender fluid, and I love talking about that stuff, so here we go. Yeah, I think it's so exciting and it's so freeing, and at one point in the movie, Ray talks about hearing about trans and then being like, oh yeah, that's totally me, like, great. I get to identify with this, and that's how I felt too. It was not something that was ever talked about when I was a kid. It wasn't something that came up for me while I was growing up, and then I moved away from this small town and I met all these people, and I finally was able to freely connect and talk about this gender fluid, gender queer, gender confused person that I am, and have been able to express that and feel confused by it sometimes, but I think it's so beautiful. I love being surrounded in the work that I do by so many people who are thinking about gender and breaking down gender binaries every day. It's really powerful, and there's so much creativity and love that comes through these processes, and a lot of space to allow everyone, even if you identify with the gender you were assigned at birth, you're born and somebody's like, oh, it's a girl, and you're like, yeah, I'm a girl my whole life. That's so powerful that we can talk about that.
Did either of you want to speak to that? Yeah.
Sorry, I was spacing out there a little bit, listening to Alex. I would say, I don't know, the best part is that I wake up and I get to be me every day. I'm not pretending to be somebody else. I'm not pretending to be somebody else's expectations. I think, like I tweeted my mom. She doesn't have Twitter, but I still tweeted her on International Women's Day, and I said, I love you, Mom, but I can't ever be the person that you want me to be, but I'm the person that I need to be. And I think that's probably the best part of my path is is that once I overcame that kind of, I guess, I want to say I overcame death, basically, and then once I got past that point, I got to explore who I was unimpeded because I was no longer afraid. So that was really empowering, and I think that's like the best part is that exploration, and I think that's like been probably the best part of my life so far and continuing to explore that. Like every day I wake up and I'm excited because something new is going to happen, right? And I'm not slogged down in this pretending and faking being somebody that I wasn't ever. And then all the coping mechanisms that developed out of that psychological, inculcation to be somebody I wasn't, like obsessive compulsive disorder and stuff like that, to the points where I couldn't hold down jobs, I had no friends, I couldn't leave my house, and that all fell away when I got to that nexus where I decided that I need to be me or I'm just not going to be. And so I think that from that point on, every day has been a blessing.
Thanks for that great question, starting this out on such a positive note. And I think I heard you say you wanted to hear us all speak to it, so I can speak to it as well. I think that for me, there was just a wellspring of connectivity that happened when I was able to be open about how I felt with people in my life. And around me, I was so transphobic internally that I had so much shame and judgment about myself that I just could barely whisper who I was to the people that seemed like the safest in the world to me. And it was only, I guess the big revelation for me was just how powerful it was to experience other people who were less judgmental about who I was than I was. And I know for a fact there's no way I could have come out in any way without other people's acceptance and support. There's no way I could have generated that on my own, just given the lessons I learned growing up. And so just the power of other people's acceptance. So it's no small thing to see you all here tonight deepening your understanding of this and bringing your acceptance to this matter. So thank you. And with that, I'll open the floor to another question or comment.
As far as what we can do what we're doing right now, which is sitting in this room and asking these questions and watching these films and having these discussions and going to, queer and trans centered kind of forums and stuff like that, and participating in that dialogue in our day-to-day life kind of thing with friends and relatives and other people that we encounter. And as far as Victoria, I don't know. I've been all over the place, and there's jerks everywhere. They seem to be equally distributed. So, I mean, I've had bad experiences in every place I've been to, but that's just individuals. I don't think that's kind of to say it's inherent within the city or town. Although I can identify with the Midwest in the States or the prairies, definitely getting stared at a lot more. But like Ray said, it's just like you just think you're so over the top fabulous. They just can't take their eyes off you, It's like, is it hot on this bus or is it just me? It must be me, So, I mean, that's kind of been my feeling towards it. But, like for instance, Victoria, I think it was 2 years ago, St. Paddy's Day was really we had a violent interaction downtown when the ledge was still going. And I think it was just because there was just more people out and there was more people drinking and stuff like that. And so it was, I think it was just, sometimes it's just about gauging the environment that you're going to be in and whether or not you're going to be safe and knowing where you are. And that kind of sucks to have to think like that, like, oh, where am I going tonight? And who am I going to be with? And how can where's the exits? And how can I escape? And am I going to get home safely? Those types of things. It sucks to have to think that way, but I don't know. that's just how I think when I go out nowadays. So.
So I work at the Victoria Sexual Assault Center, and that's a new name for us. Formerly, we were known as the Women's Sexual Assault Center, and so last year we officially opened all of our services to all trans folks, all gender variant folks, as well as continuing to serve women and trans women. And so that alone is amazing, and there's other centers doing similar work, but in some ways it's also unheard of that a center would apply for a grant and like really dedicate becoming trans inclusive to the whole staff for years. And so I'm really honored to be doing this work. And in the work I do, I get to go and do workshops with other community organizations and with nurses, and it's so fun. It's so great to be talking about gender with people who are, it's really new for a lot of folks. These terms are really new for a lot of people, but everybody is so on board and excited to learn. And to me, that's really inspiring. There are jerks everywhere, and they're evenly distributed. I love that, and I think that we know that, and as a community, we're going to continue standing up to that violence, and we're going to continue addressing it. But I feel really excited to have all of these people who are kind of new and learning about this new knowledge in some ways for them, that are going to be standing there behind me learning and listening and hopefully advocating as well. And then on the other side, here in Victoria, I have met so many amazing people, so many amazing queer and trans folks, and made like really powerful connections and friendships. And so I think we're doing pretty awesome.
And you're reminding me too that it really does seem like there's a groundswell right now. I mean, the trans movement is growing around the world, and the internet is a huge part of that. I think it's helping people get connected that didn't know each other existed before. But also, I don't know, there's this feeling I've had at least, and I know others have shared it with me in Victoria recently, that there's something growing here, that there's a critical mass building around queer culture, trans culture somehow, and things like the Victoria Sexual Assault Center officially doing this work is an example of how that happens, or so maybe a result of some of that. I don't know.
For me, what's amazing about this film is, as somebody who identifies as genderqueer and goes by they and kind of inhabits this world that a lot of people haven't heard about, I can just be like, well, you got to check out Ray Spoon and watch this movie, and then you can give me coffee and use the right pronoun for me, and it's all going to make sense. And I love living in this world between binaries. I don't even know what world I'm in. I'm like in a whole other galaxy, and every day feels totally different, and I love that ability to be fluid, but I also won't lie, and it's true that I feel also the pressure sometimes to conform, and in some ways it's like discovering who I am, and in some ways it's also, wouldn't it just feel so much safer if I looked exactly like a dude and I could just go into the men's washroom? So maybe I need to do all these things, but also what if I one day want to do things, like have surgery, let's say, and what does that mean about who I am? Does that mean I'm less genderqueer? And so I know in my brain I'm like, there's a million ways to be trans and it's so powerful, but I still feel the outside world putting pressure on me, and I'm just trying to fight that too, because I think it is really powerful when people are breaking down those stereotypes, and I want to be a part of that.
That's a good question. And I think, the whole kind of idea about being trapped in a body or whatever, that was kind of the childish way that I tried to explain it to my parents, and But it wasn't necessarily accurate, because it took me a long time to figure out that in that kind of childish dialogue, that gender and sex need to get a divorce, because they don't need to be together. You don't need to be a woman with a female body, even though in our society you see forums all the time that say gender male female. And I'm always thinking, well, where's intersexed in there, and how come they're asking for gender but they're only giving sex designators? So I feel like society's constantly kind of conflating these terms, and that's part of those binary forces, right? Like, you have to be a female woman and you have to be a male man in a lot of instances, and so I began having a dialogue with myself, like, no, I don't need to be a female woman. But in the trans community, I kept that quiet, because in the trans community, I felt I was oppressed there as well, because a lot of the questions that I would get from other trans women was, are you pre-op? And are you post-op? Or, when are you getting your surgery? And this pressure to go through this medicalized process that I didn't feel that I wanted to go through, but I felt like I was having to say, oh yeah, no, I'm doing that soon. Because, that legitimated me being a trans woman in the trans community. And it took me a while to overcome that. And now, I have my blog, Daphne Shaid, a woman with a penis, and that's just fine, because I can be a woman with a penis. But it took me a long time to figure that out, right? And part of that process happened with my current partner when we were naked together, and she said she kind of tickled my penis and said, oh, I love your Mr. Johnson. And I said, it's not a Mr., it's a Mrs. And then I was like, that just like clicked with me. I was like, Mrs. Johnson, holy fuck. I just need to this can be my woman's body, This is my woman's body. It looks different from your woman's body or another woman's body, but this is my woman's body. And, it's okay if I have a Mrs. Johnson or an Audi or, I wrote an essay once, and it said feminist fascism and why my penis, or why my vagina looks like a penis. And for me it was breaking down that gendered sex. We don't have to have that sex being congruent with our gender. And so I don't feel like I'm trapped in the wrong body. I feel like most of the time I'm trapped in the wrong society, and I'm waiting for the mothership to come pick me up and take me back to my home planet, right?
Wonderful, thank you. Oh, one more thought, and I just know another trans woman who refers to her penis as her lady stick. Thank you for that, and that's such a great point that it's such a normal thing we all need to do. And if you think about having to go out into the world and pretend that you don't get to use any of the bathrooms out there, and that you just have to wait until you get home. What that would make your life like, just to go shopping, or how sort of stranded you might feel, and this is something that trans people often deal with, and anyone who's gender queer fluid.
The bathrooms are probably one of the most scariest places in any building I have to go into, because you're always bracing yourself for that confrontation that might happen, and sometimes does. And at UVic, I don't know, everybody's kind of in this fog of academia, so they don't really notice you when you're in the bathroom. But I worry about it more when I'm at the Bay Center or something like that, right? And And I've told this story a lot because it's funny, but I was at the Irish Times pub, and I was in this vintage dress, and I was dressed up, and we were out for dinner, and I went down. You have to go down these stairs into this tiny hallway, and I went, and they were packed that night, and I went into the bathroom, and there was a line, and I was like, oh, there's a line. I don't want to wait because somebody might look at me for too long and then, start deconstructing me, kind of thing, right? So I went and I stood in line, and I was apprehensive and anxious, and I was having a panic attack, and the woman in front of me was kind of swaying a little bit, and she kind of turned, and then she turned again, and I was like, oh no. And she said, do you have a pad? and I thought, no, but I'm going to dig around in my purse like I do have one. So I was like, just hold on. No, I don't. And, and she's like, that's okay. And then she asked the girl in front of her. And I was like, oh my goodness. And right after, it was just one of those moments that felt so validating in that moment. And this was when I was still kind of really apprehensive about going out. And I just remember thinking on the way up the stairs that was just like when bikers are on the highway and they're like, because she was like, hello, fellow menstruator. And I was like, it was such a good feeling. And so there is positive bathroom experiences too, right? So that was one of them. But sometimes, you do have the negative one, like when I was at a swimming pool and I got the police called on me for being in the women's change room. Or, I was at a hotel in Ottawa and they called security on me because, again, I was in a women's change room. And so, and even at the Ian Stewart pool during the summer, which is the open pool up by UVic, I was changing into my bathing suit and a woman came in with her 2 kids and her 2 kids came and sat on the same bench as me, and then she looked at me and was staring and staring and staring, and I could feel her staring at me, and I was like, just go away. And then she grabbed her 2 kids and went to the other side of the change room, like as far as they could possibly go. And and it's that hurts, but but there's positive moments too, though, right? So. Anyways. I was raised on the island, but I wasn't born on these lands. I was born on the lands of the Tsuut'ina as a settler outside of Calgary in this tiny, tiny hamlet. It's called, who knows what a hamlet is? I know. Yeah, okay. So it was like 9 houses and 11 grain elevators. So it was like, and there was one house that was a gas station, corner store, Sears catalog store, laundromat, and then the people lived above it. So it was like, this 2-story house, and the bottom was like the general store. I think it was actually called a mercantile or something like that. And I was born at Calgary, in the city of Calgary, where my mom worked as a nurse, and then we were living there. My dad was an artist, and my mom had to drive like an hour and a half to get into Calgary every day to go to work as a nurse, and she spun her car out of control in a September snowstorm, and the stress caused her to pop me out, and. But I have really early memories about that place and playing with the only other child in the whole entire town, and then we moved away from there and came here, and I've never been back. I think I looked for it on Google Earth once and I couldn't find it. It was just I don't know. It's like the wheat has overgrown it or something. I don't know. But yeah, I don't. And I remember my dad telling me that there was a sign when you turned onto the road to go to Schuler, it was called, and that it basically said there's nothing down here. Turn around, go back. You're on the wrong road. So yeah, I haven't been back, but it would be interesting to go back and find out what happened to that place and that house that I was kind of spent my first years in.
I grew up in a town called Abbotsford, and it's definitely not a hamlet. It's got a population probably of 100,000 now, and it's one of the fastest growing cities now in, I think, North America. Its economy is just exploding. And when I grew up there, it was, especially the area I lived in, was really evangelical, and I remember having to walk through prayer circles to get to my public school, to go to school in the morning. So when I was in high school, there were a few other queer students that I kind of knew about, and both of them didn't finish high school. I left high school early also, and got out as fast as I could. And to be honest, when I go back, I kind of go to my parents' house and lock myself inside and don't really go exploring. But I still hear stories about what's going on. So I came out in grade 12 to my friends and lost all my friends. And then I had a dream about them and sent them a Facebook message and got a message from a few of them that said, we still don't really want to talk to you, but got a message from a couple others that said, you've turned into Alex, and that's really beautiful. You seem like you're having a really good life, and I'm really happy, and I'm sorry for what I did. So I think that lots of people have gone out into the world and learned and have moved back to Abbotsford and are bringing that knowledge. I know at my high school there are a few my old high school, there are a few out trans students who go there, and the conversations are changing. And so I believe that I'm glad you brought this up because that's what they asked us to talk about in Calgary. So I think things are changing. I think that people are like speaking loudly, and you talk about like what things were like 25 years ago, and it's incredible to me how fast change is happening. And now I'm just rambling. So Abbotsford, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna just turn our attention to Bill C-279, and as Mandy mentioned, we have Martha Julleret has gratefully come to speak tonight with us about the bill on Randy's behalf. Thank you. Please.
Yeah, I'll note that you called him Randy when I see him, too, and see
Randall.
what he says. Okay.
Hope he's not super tough.
Martha Julleret, and I'm actually an assistant to Randall Garrison, and I represent him with LGBT issues locally. And I want to tie into a couple of things. First of all, I've only lived here for a few years. I was actually born and raised in the southern United States in the 50s. So if any of you are feeling like Victoria is not a very welcoming place at any point, just call me, and I will tell you how fabulous this is, in comparison at least, shall we say. Bill C-279, I'm sure all of you know, is a bill that was sponsored by Randall Garrison to include transgender persons into the Human Rights Act of Canada, and also to prohibit hate crimes based on gender identity into the federal criminal code, so that transgender people will now be treated equally along with everybody else in Canada. As you all know, again, I'm sure we have a majority conservative parliament right now, and so it took a monumental effort to pass that bill, both on the part of Randall, but also on the part of hundreds of trans people who had the courage to sit down personally with their MPs of all parties and say, this is my story and this is what needs to happen and why. And other trans people who wrote letters, and 700 human rights groups that joined in to that effort. That bill passed because 18 conservatives also had nieces or nephews or children of their own or family members who were trans, and had the courage themselves to cross the aisle, as it were, and vote so that that could pass. And so the first thing I want to say is to all of you who made that happen, thank you. I love and respect you for what you did. It was nothing short of a miracle and short of remarkable courage that made that happen. Now, the second thing is, and this is also, by the way, because of your efforts, the only private member's bill that has passed the 41st Parliament. And nothing, again, short of miraculous. Now, in the meantime, though, it went to the Senate, and there it has sat for a year, and nothing has happened. The 1 year mark passed, and Randall publicly called for this bill to finally be passed. 100 human rights groups, led by Amnesty International, have just called publicly for this bill to pass. It has now been 8 years, and 2 of these bills have passed the House of Commons. There is no reason whatsoever why they should not pass this. So if you have nothing to do this week, start writing letters to all the BC senators and to the leader of the government of the Senate. And if you need information about that, just email our office. We'll give you everything you need. Or I can take your name here. I need to leave pretty soon, but I have to say, in relation to some of the things you've been talking about, that the single The biggest barrier that we're facing right now is that the Senate is still having arguments about bathroom issues. Those are amendments that are being threatened that could pull the whole thing out. So those issues just don't seem to stop. They don't seem to die. And it's time for them to do this. So I'd appreciate any help you can give us on that. And I really appreciate all that you've had to say. Being an old person sitting in a very young room here, it gives me great hope to see how much of a process of evolution all of this is. Because, of course, again, growing up in the 50s, lesbians particularly, I recall, had very strict roles, we all had to figure out who was the butch, who was the femme, and all that kind of stuff. And I remember us, later being kind of funny about that. Now, who's the butch? We'd all have to figure that out, It was, a time of really intense labeling, I think. And I think we've all relaxed a lot. And it's really, one of the most encouraging things to me about the movie was that there really wasn't that much conversation in the end about gender at all. In fact, I was kind of struck by that. I kept waiting for it. Well, now, isn't this a film about a transgender person from the prairies? Talk about it. It just kind of floated by. It's like, gender's stupid. Okay, end of sentence. So really, some of the most profound and extraordinary things in that movie had more to do with her father's mental illness than they did about gender. Great, we're over it. Yes, finally. So I really appreciated that. And my one last story to tell you about Victoria is that when we did move here 3 years ago, this Anglican priest who's 80 years old lived across the hall in the condo where we are. And my partner dragging stuff from the U-Haul upstairs. And he says, "Oh, you must be the new lady moving in, across the hall." Yes. And, I'm, and he's wearing a collar and all this, oh my God. And didn't we just move away from this? And then he said, "And where's your wife? I'd like to meet her too." With, oh my God, we've gone to heaven. So, I thought, well, if they've got it, everybody else has got it too. So I really greatly appreciate being here, and thanks for the time to talk about the bill.
Thank you. Regina's sounding better and better. You're also willing to take people's email addresses, right? If anyone wants information about where to send your letters, or if you need that information, or just please come talk to Martha and get your email address down. Because especially in this day where it's so easy to sign a digital petition or send off an email, to actually send a handwritten letter is worth probably, I don't know what the stats are these days, I'm imagining like 50 or 100 emails or something like that. So do that. So much work has been done. It's so exciting that it's ready to pass.
There's always work to be done, and if you're asking, local issues, I would say number one, Randall Garrison is a local MP here, and right now, and so we can lend our it's been, and that bill has been dubbed the bathroom bill by groups like the Real Women of Canada, whatever that is, and I've had confrontations with them too. But also there's other things going on as well, like I'm kind of in the process of a kind of a statement or a letter to go to UVic and Camosun both, because of the way that they teach sexuality in our school is inappropriate. And so when I finally get the words all on paper and stuff like that, I'll be probably looking for signatories or people to provide some people power to that, because that needs to change too. I mean, I'm in a university that doesn't know the difference between my sex and my gender, and doesn't know, or doesn't seem to know, or hides the fact that there's a wealth of diversity out there. I mean, they talk about sex as male and female, and there's so much more. There's like 50 known intersex conditions. 1 in 600 births in Canada are said to be intersex. And so how come when we're talking about sex in class, they say male and female? How come my teacher says, we're going to analyze gender as a bivariate analysis, and then writes gender, and then writes male and female on the board? And I'm just sitting there going, no, we're not. We're analyzing sex, and we're only analyzing 2 parts of it, right? So, you know, how come in 3rd and 4th year classes that I'm paying? I feel like the dupe sometimes, because I'm like, I'm paying to be here, and you know, as a university that claims that it's cutting edge and that it's one of the best in Canada and all this kind of stuff, and I'm just like, well, they still don't know about the birds and the bees apparently. And you know, and I've even been to a gender class there. In sociology, that I felt like I was doing most of the teaching because I was putting up my hand every 2 seconds and going, no. And, you know, so, and it's hard. Those are, to me, those are microaggressions, and those are those little tiny, you know, moments where you're getting chinks in your armor, so to speak, right? And you're getting hacked at by the institution, you know, really saying, well, you're not a person. And that's what, you know, what Ray said, you're invisible, you know, and I sometimes kind of muse with myself that, you know, the institutions like University of Victoria has inadvertently made me a superhero because I have the power of invisibility, but unfortunately it's not something I choose to have.
Yeah, I totally agree with Daphne, so I'm going to talk about something else. It's money, I think, is a big thing. Too, there's so many organizations, I mean, even just this week, Island Sexual Health, that, you know, many queer and trans folks go and use their services to get the health care they need, and VARC's lost funding this week. And so it's not a possibility for everyone, but if you do have that extra little bit of money, putting it towards organizations that are supporting trans folks is huge. There's a lack of that money, especially with the government that we have right now, federal government we have right now. And I feel like I have to talk about some events for Victoria Sexual Assault Center. So we have an event called Walk a Mile, and I don't know what day it is, but somebody's going to yell it out. May 25th. On May 25th, Walk a Mile is an event to get men, but all folks engaged with ending gender-based violence. It sounds like a really, really fun event where you walk a mile and you like celebrate ending gender-based violence and bringing community together and having these really important conversations. And then we also have 2 events if you're somebody who likes to do triathlons or wants to try that. We have the Tri of Compassion, which is on June 29th, and we have the Goddess Run, which is on June. No, you got to look online.
Victoria Goddess and Tour de Victoria, August 24th.
And Victoria Goddess and Tour de Victoria on August 24th. So there's so many cool events happening in town too, and I think, to me, what's really powerful about events is the community that gets formed by going to those. So even if you can't raise thousands of dollars for organizations and you're just going to participate, that's still part of standing in solidarity.
I don't know if one of you remembers Jay's last name from the conference on the weekend, but there's a trans man in Toronto, somewhere, well, working for the Ontario, I believe the Board of Education, or part of the Board of Education there, has put a list of several hundred kids' books that include other options around gender and sexuality and things like that, and is working to get those into the school system. So,
Jay Wallace.
Jay Wallace, there we go. So if you Google Jay Wallace, he's offered to send that list out to anybody who's interested in it, so you can get those titles. A lot of them are out of print, unfortunately, but so we've come to the end of our evening. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say too is look at all the wonderful resources we have just in our town alone. Invite these people into your own organization to do a workshop on trans inclusiveness. Why not, right? So start where you are in your own organization. It's a beautiful thing to do. We all do these workshops, the in-service things in our organization. So just, pitch it to your organization. Hey, I went to this event. I think it would be great if we did one of these workshops. hire anyone, there's a lot of people in this room that would be happy to do those workshops. So you don't know who, just email me and I'll let you know. So thank you so much for coming out and sticking it out and really hearing all of our discussion. Big hand for our panel members for coming and sharing their wisdom, their knowledge, and their experience. And I'm going to hand the mic. Oh, you've got a mic of your own. Okay.
Yeah. Wow. I just want to say a big thank you to Meta for moderating this discussion. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for Meta. Thank you. And to Maureen and Alex and Daphne, thank you so much. We're so honored here. I'm sure I speak on behalf of the whole Open Cinema team, honored to have been part of creating this discussion and this event. And thank you all for being here. We're not quite done yet. Global Village Gifts has little thank yous that we offer. So thank you. Do let Martha know your address if you want to put your name to making sure that Bill 279 does move forward. And, feel free to come and speak to the panel members when we're done. But thank you so much. This has been such a full, rich evening. And on behalf of the Open Cinema team, thank you so much for being here. And let's continue this conversation in many ways. Thanks so much.